Hey, everybody. Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
And we got that guy.
I'm James Korte.
There it is.
Korte's back. And as always,
Korte's back.
when Korte's back, it's going to be about
That could be a movie title, couldn't it? Like Korte's back.
Korte's back.
Yeah.
Back in the studio.
Now with beard.
Yes. Yes, this is one of those episodes.
Facial hair.
You might want to
Now
check
with
out
facial hair.
You might want to
Yes.
check out the video version if you don't normally, just to see, Korte's facial hair,
It is well groomed, looks nice, yes.
It does, yes.
For those of us that can't grow facial hair, we're jealous. But anyway.
So I get my 4 days of stubble, then I've got to move on from that. So,
that's right. Yeah. Is
right,
that what we're talking about today?
No, we're not.
Oh,
We're not
okay.
talking about facial hair. That's not part of the game here. Maybe we could do a whole separate, one of our TEConnect After Dark episodes or
Yes.
something.
Yes.
About facial hair.
Do you have some product recommendations?
Well, hey,
Let's
there you
see, there you
go. There you go. All right.
Itchiness of the first 2 weeks.
Reach out to Korte. He will help you out if you're trying to grow a beard. He'll help you make it
man.
smooth and not itchy. Good stuff. But no, what we're going to talk about today, we're going
Yes.
to up our marketing game, as always. And we have
Yes.
Korte on. It's all about, how can we up our marketing game?
absolutely.
How can we do things better? So today we're talking search,
Yep.
which is one of those topics
Search.
that I think a lot of people probably are a little hesitant to be like, yeah, I don't, I know that it's important, but
Yeah.
that's just for the big dogs, right? That's for
yeah.
the biggest of the big. When I search something, I'm seeing all the big, giant names. I'm never going to get up there, right? Well, spoiler alert, it's a little easier than you might think.
It is.
Oh, you
To
think?
actually make yourself high on search
Are we
results.
demystifying how easy it could be?
Yeah, so
All
we're going
right,
to talk
all
about how
right.
to make sure that your company, your content, your expertise shows up early and often when someone searches online. We're going to get into the why you should be doing this. That should be obvious, but we're going to make it a little more obvious. We're going to get into the how to start your SEO strategy, the execution side of things, how to get into it. And then we're going to back it up with some proof because we've done it.
We got proof?
Yeah, we've actually managed to do it. There are some places where BlueStar shows up as the top organic search, when you look for something.
Nice.
And we're going to show you what we've done. And again, pointing out that there's kind of only one guy in this room who's an SEO expert here for us that's done this.
Yes.
Which means you guys can do this pretty easily too.
There you go.
And to that point, and sorry to interject early here, but I wouldn't consider myself an SEO expert.
There
I
you
know
go.
enough to be dangerous, and I think after watching this podcast, see how the teaser there?
Yes, yes.
You too will know enough to truly show up high in a meaningful spot on search. And I'll say quickly that the reason I thought this was a good call is that I spend so much time talking about paid advertising.
Right.
And I just realized that a lot of people don't have the luxury to do that. And so
right.
in the absence of having a bunch of money to spend on search, or rather on paid ads, what should you be doing? And search is the thing. So
There you go.
Bingo.
All that, night of the VAR. What's tech connected with us? It's time to plug in, do a little searching, get connected.
Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
All right, let's jump into it here. Let's start with the why. As Simon Sinek says, start with your why. And let's talk about this. Let's explain, again, I understand people probably get all right, it's good to, when someone searches something that you pop up, but explain just how important that is. Again, maybe thinking about from our point of view and our level of where we're at here. Why is it so important to rank high in search? How long does and how long does it take to make that happen? Because again, I think this is where we might surprise some folks about some details here. So take it away, explain the importance, explain the process there, and maybe elaborate a little bit more on what you're talking about, the paid advertising and why it's so important to maybe do this versus if you don't have the budget or the ability or the time to do paid.
yeah, I was going to kind of recap that, which is to say a majority of a BlueStar's customers don't have, $5,000-$10,000 to be spending monthly on paid advertising and kind of proactively getting in front of prospects with their message on Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever they might think about doing that. And so the other option, if you're not doing that, is either think about the organic strategy, which search is a big piece of, or sit back and wait, right? Or have your sales team go out and cold call, which I know plenty of sales teams are still doing. And so, the why is exactly that, so that when you're not spending money on paid advertising, people are still discovering you, right? And so I think there's the obvious, well, we already show up, James, when someone searches for our company name, which is great.
Yeah.
And of course, if that's
I would hope so.
Yeah.
right, and if it's
But then again, it doesn't happen sometimes, though. Yeah.
and you should definitely check on that, right? And because we're BlueStar.
Yeah.
BlueStar is a pretty darn competitive.
By the
term.
way, there's a lot of companies called BlueStar out there.
Certainly are. And we do show up, I believe, first in organic search for just BlueStar, which is good. But that's the first thing to go and take a look at is that happening? But then you want to think a lot more broadly than that about the terms that people who have intent for your products and services might be searching for, starting to show up for that. There's a debate, there, so to speak, has been a debate in marketing circles about, brand building. How do you build awareness so people know who you are and they trust you and stuff like that? And often search showing up in Google more specifically. And I want to talk not just about Google today, but the other places to consider when we're talking about search. But it can be a brand builder. And my example would be, so why do we invest in search, so to speak, and spend our time there? I searched before we headed over here to shoot the show today, I searched how to build a marketing plan, which is if I had to guess, I don't know, 5,000-10,000 searches a month on something like that.
Oh, I'm sure.
HubSpot shows up first.
Yeah.
We are HubSpot
There you
customers
go.
at BlueStar.
Well,
and
that makes sense.
it's a high quality post, but that's the type of thing where if you can show up, and I'm not always suggesting you've got to show up for these huge high volume search terms, but if you start to build some presence in your world, people are going to go, damn, this company must know what they're talking about. They're showing up in all of these relevant terms for things that matter to me. They must be an authority. So a big reason why investing time and thinking about search is important is because it will give you that authoritative kind of place in your industry. And also it'll drive traffic to your website, and more traffic to your website means more potential, inbound leads for your sales team. So that's the why, if it weren't already obvious.
There you go.
I'm going to throw one out there. I don't know if this is a curveball or not, but have you heard the phrase, the cookie crumble? Like the online cookie is crumbling in the sense that Google's getting rid of it. Well, they delayed it. It was supposed to be the end of 2023, but now it's like mid 2024. So they're no longer using cookies to kind of track your usage and things of that nature.
Everyone hates cookies. Yeah.
Which the ad agencies were all in a panic last year about, oh my God, our whole industry is going away, vaporizing because Google's making some changes. So to your point, Korte, I mean, like if you were doing some kind of paid or something like that, and the sandbox is changing a little bit. By the way, it's literally called Google's Privacy Sandbox Initiative that is replacing that. Then maybe SEO becomes even more important, or at least you should go back if you haven't been there in years. You set up your website, it's whatever, it just chugs along. Maybe you'd been doing some paid or whatnot, but I don't know. And maybe some things like that are like more reason to say, take a step back and say, maybe I should be getting into my SEO again.
Right.
For sure. Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, I think cookies is relevant to kind of like retargeting.
Yeah.
Right. Like you get cookied when you
what
visit
you
a
can
website.
learn about someone who visits your site or your stuff. Yeah.
Right. And then being able to kind of put messaging back in front of them.
Absolutely. But I know even small resellers, mid-size for sure. I know we've talked to people, we've talked to people in the industry that use kind of that technique to try to get people to draw in there, and maybe not even thinking about the SEO. It's just one of those things for me that, I can definitely see that not being thought about for years type of a thing.
Yeah, most definitely. And you're right. I remember, Dean, when we surveyed our customer base, and we were surprised. I think it was prior to a VARTech session that we did where we found out 45% of our customers were doing some sort of paid.
Right.
And within that, a large majority of it was paid search.
Yeah.
And, my thoughts on that are pretty well documented, which is there's certainly value. A lot of companies kind of base their entire marketing strategy around paid search. So obviously it works for them. But man, it can be costly.
And it's kind of a losing game.
Yeah.
If your competitors have more money to throw at than
for
you,
sure.
than you do,
Absolutely. We know
do.
that. Yeah.
And you've got to stay on that horse, right? Like if you want to continue driving traffic through that channel, then you've got to keep paying. Whereas this is what's the sustainable strategy that we could be working around in the background. And John, I'll touch on something you said a second ago as well, which is there are a lot of myths around SEO. And obviously SEO is always changing. The way that Google and Bing and these platforms work are adjusting their algorithms, have new releases and all that good stuff. So any advice is only as good as, before the next update kind of thing.
Right.
But
we'll check back next year. Maybe you have to do this again. Yeah.
that exactly. Truly. But one of the myths is, and it's a myth kind of propagated by SEO agencies because it's a tough thing to walk into a business and say, hey, if you pay us X amount per month to do an audit, to create new content and blah, 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 you're going to have meaningful organic search traffic in a month. That's, it's difficult to deliver on that,
Right.
for sure. Meaning positively to say we can definitely do that. It's a real gamble. So instead they come in and say, hey, listen, you got to give this some time, which isn't unfair. But what is also true, today is Thursday, right? If by Monday I had to have a web page ranking for Dean Reverman, I could do it. It can happen that quickly. And, you know, when you get into the weeds
What about
here,
John Martin? Because that's a pretty damn boring
yeah,
name.
that's why I use Dean Reverman. That's why I use Dean Reverman. No,
A little bit more ubiquitous, John Martin. Yes.
Well,
They're going to have to work a little bit harder
John
to make my
Smith.
name.
Yes. Yeah.
Which works in some ways for me. So, you know.
Well, absolutely. You can kind of stay a little anonymous.
Exactly.
Well, you're joking-ish, but also like that is a good point. And that is that kind of simple, high-level thinking about search really is kind of what it is. Where do we think we can win? Where are the terms? What does the competition look like? If you go to a first page, like who are we competing with from an authority standpoint, from a quality of content standpoint? But just to get back to, you know, my example about Dean, I love to give tactical advice. Exactly how to go do this because it makes good clips for LinkedIn, but also because I want people to go away and go, oh, okay, that's how this works.
Right.
So if I went to the office right now when we wrap this up and built a simple WordPress one-page website, it could be deanreverman.com, which I don't think is owned, doesn't have to be, and I wrote a page title that said, Dean Reverman is a boss at marketing, and then the meta description said, Dean Reverman is a veteran, you know, marketing pro with this many years of experience, and he currently works at BlueStar, and then published it. Maybe eventually, over the course of a week or two, or however long Google decides to go in, index, and then crawl that page, it would eventually show up. But you can be proactive. You can go into a tool called Google Search Console.
And kind of force it?
Yes, you can send it to Google and say, hey, here's a new page. Priority, you know, crawl this for me. And that is the way that you can very quickly get a page to show up.
That's kind of cool.
For a unique term that doesn't have super high, you know, competition or what have you.
Right.
Yeah, and it's pretty neat. So it used to be called Google Webmaster, and now it's Google Search Console. That is something worth looking into. So
there you go.
There you go. Good stuff. Well, then let's get it, because you started touching a little bit of the strategy potentially and how to go about doing this, and we'll get to the execution moment. But where do you think you get started when it comes to an SEO strategy? Like, what do you recommend that people be thinking about or doing when it comes time to, like, all right, I know I want to do this. I know I want to have some kind of a strategy, but how do I get started? How do I determine what kind of searches I should be targeting? Right.
Yep.
Like, give us some examples of what you should be thinking about. You know, again, putting ourselves in the shoes of a small VAR who was like, hey, I want to be the folks. We want to be the company for what we do, maybe in our geographic area or for some very specific type of technology that we know we're the best at and we sell really well. How do they get started with that?
So in my opinion, and this is true for like most marketing things, this is the most critical step.
Right.
It's the strategy. It's what should we do and why. That being said, when it comes to SEO, it's pretty forgiving. Meaning if you go and say, hey, we're going to start here, and it doesn't pan out, doesn't bear fruit,
You can pivot pretty easily.
go do something else, right? Keep trying. And even I think top SEOs, and I've started over the last 5 or 6 months to listen to a lot of podcasts from top technical SEOs, as they call them. They're still doing the same stuff we're going to recommend today, which is we know what we know. We know the best practices. We're just going to go experiment, see what works and what doesn't. But my advice would be to create a feedback loop with your sales team if you have one, especially if you have a technical sales team. What kind of questions are people asking on sales calls? Shout out to Brett Cooper at Blue Fletch. I haven't actually read the book, but he mentioned a book called They Ask, You Answer, which kind of tells you right in the title exactly what it is.
Yeah.
That is the strategy. What are people searching for? You also want to be thinking about their intent, right? So it's easy. Well, it's not easy, but you can fall in a trap of saying, we just want to show up for asset tracking, which good luck. But also, let's just say that you could, right? Let's say it's something a little bit more niche than that. Well, that might mean that when people search free asset tracking software, you show up. You don't want to show up for that. You want to show up for people who have intent for what you've got, whatever your products and services are. So my advice would be start with your sales team, your internal team, to say, what do we know? What are people asking? What questions are we always getting? Let's go answer those questions. But then you want to go through a process that SEO experts call keyword research. There are free tools out there. One is from Google. It's called Keyword or Google Search Planner. It's pretty good. It'll tell you, approximately how many searches per month. It'll tell you what the competition is, but that's relative to paid search. We have a tool at BlueStar that we use. It's a paid tool. It's like $300 a year, so it's pretty inexpensive. But there's also a free version of it. It's called, this is not a good name, it's called Mangools. It's out of Estonia or something. It used to be called KW Finder, Keyword Finder, which I thought was way better.
Way better.
Right. I didn't realize they changed their name. Yeah.
Yeah, it's officially Mangools now, but you get so many searches per month for free. You can log in with your Google account or whatever. It gives you real good input on estimated searches per month, similar to Keyword Planner, but then it will tell you the difficulty score to rank. And it will basically say still possible, easy, yeah, it's doable, or like good luck, dude.
Yeah.
Basically.
Not going to happen, right?
And it will show you, and you could go get the same information from literally searching the term and then seeing what shows up on the first page of Google, which they refer to as the SERP, Search Engine Results page. But it will show you the SERP, and it will show you, okay, Oracle is showing up for this. Touch Bistro is showing up for this. Their relative domain authority or strength is this. So it just gives you a really quick snapshot of who is vying for these specific keywords, what is the relative difficulty in making this happen, and if I were to win, meaning get to that first page, which everyone probably knows this, but I'll say it anyway, is really the only meaningful page within Google is the first.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some caveats there, but not really.
Yeah.
It'll give you a pretty good idea of like, is this worth thinking about? Now, two quick things. First one is, one of the, I think, really good pieces of advice when it comes to identifying things to focus on, key phrases, keywords, what have you, is thinking in clusters. So maybe we go and create a main article about a specific topic, but then if within that topic there are 4 or 5 subtopics, we might create individual posts for each of those, and we're going to link to it from the main one. I know that HubSpot was really noteworthy in talking about topic clusters, but so some of those things you probably are never going to rank for in search, but it's more about thinking about your reader's experience. So one of your pages is showing up in search, and then from there, they're going to other pages of yours because you're going deeper on them or whatever. The other thing that I'm going to pose to you two is, are you familiar with the term long tail? Does that have meaning for you?
Yes, maybe not in context though, but go ahead.
So long tail it's a strategy. This is nothing new, but it's basically saying instead of trying to rank for asset tracking, you might try to rank for how does RFID asset tracking work? Or asset tracking companies in Charlotte.
I see.
Adding more modifiers to it.
Yeah.
Now, of course, the number of searches for those longer tail terms is going to be smaller, but your ability to win for those searches goes up.
I see.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was going to ask,
and
about
more
that.
relevant, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
The more specificity
Exactly.
that you're.
I was going to ask
More
about like the
intent,
regionality part of it, because I know a lot of our VARs are regionally based, within a certain area, and and if you want to compete against maybe some of the larger national type versions that are out there, I would think that regionality would be a big part of it. But to your point, not many people are going to go, I need X, Y, Z in my specific city or area, but wouldn't it be awesome if they did? If you were the absolute number one and potentially only choice that really pops up?
Well, honestly, if we owned a VAR, and let's just say we did, warehouse software, hardware, whatever solutions, I would absolutely think about that. Because it might be 3 or 4, searches per month in, a metro area, but like, I want that.
What kind of business? Exactly. Let's say one of those people becomes a new customer. That's worth it right there. That's worth every bit of money or time you put into this.
And that thing can compound over time, meaning if you go do the work to show up for that, unless someone listens to this podcast, takes all of our advice, and goes creates better content for the same term than you're going to hold down that spot. And even if they do it, maybe you're the second one. And if you write better meta description, which is some tactical stuff I think maybe we'll get into. You know what? I'll just talk about it now. The description that shows up, if you can visualize a Google search page or a Bing search page for any given term, you've got the blue link, you've got, which is the title of the page, and then underneath it, there's a description that tells you what the page is about. If within your content management system, your WordPress, your HubSpot, your Squarespace, whatever you're using for the site, if you don't write in that meta description, whatever the first HTML text that shows up, or really the first text on the page that shows up, will fill that space in. So I know it sounds silly, and anyone that knows anything about SEO is like, of course I've written meta descriptions and titles. I'd say that most sites over 100 pages probably are less than 50% complete when it comes to metadata. And it's really, again, it's a title, it's a description. Back in the day, there used to be all kinds of tags and funny stuff. Those are the two critical things. And the way you should think about them, and similarly, the way that you should think about writing titles and descriptions for places like YouTube which is also a huge search engine and something that you should definitely be thinking a lot about today, because Google, you guys have seen this, Google videos show up in Google search.
Yeah,
You
right.
search for a thing and there's a great video that explains how to do something in Adobe Photoshop or whatnot. That'll show up. I mean, you'll even see the little video.
Yeah.
But let's just say you're on YouTube or you're in Google. Those descriptions, those titles and descriptions are working together to convince people to click on your link versus someone else's. So you're writing marketing copy, sales copy, whatever you want to call it. So think about it that way.
Right.
Yes, you are also telling the search engine what it needs to know about your page, but just as importantly is you're convincing a user, click me, not that one.
Right.
So even if you're the second, the second one, the second result on the page, if you write a really killer meta description and a title, you still might win a bunch of the clicks. And if you do that, you might end up being number one. Because I think that's one of the factors that Google considers is when people are searching, which link do they click? What are they typically looking for? So,
So does some of the old strategy stuff still apply, you think, Korte? Like backlinking,
Absolutely.
content that you develop on the site, tagging. I guess you just got into the tagging and stuff like that. But, is some of that tried and true stuff that you've been hearing about, as you listen to the,
Yes. So simple answer is yes. And I go way back. I remember my first job, I wasn't even fully out of college. I worked for the guy who started custom silicone bracelets, he started Silly Bands.
Silly bands. Yeah, right.
But we started off doing customsiliconebracelets.com. We were spending $1,000 a day on Google ads. I thought it was crazy. But our phone was ringing off the hook because it was, I don't know if you guys remember, anyone young listen to this is like, what the hell are these guys talking about? The Livestrong bracelets, the Lance Armstrong bracelets.
And then
for
there became like 30 different kinds, different colors.
Yes.
Yeah.
The guy that I worked for was a big part of that. But back then, you wanted to like exactly match a search. You wanted to pack your page full of kind of text that you'd make light or white so it was hidden. You could basically trick Google into being like, this page is the best, whatever.
Right.
Keyword stuffing, they call it. Right. That has gone away.
Okay.
But everything else, meaning trying to really kind of think about how someone might search, like the exact language that someone might ask Google a question, that still applies. You know what I mean? I mean, again, they ask, you answer. That could be 50% of your search strategy. It's just let's brainstorm all of the questions that people might ask about what we do and go and answer them really well.
On a page, you're saying.
Page.
Yeah, and create that content. Got
Write
it.
the meta description and then go tell Google, hey, we got a new page here. Yes. And then backlinking, which is, it's a fancy term. It's funny. I've even had to look it up multiple times and make sure I knew what the hell it was. It's just linking from other sites to your site.
From other sites. Yeah, that's it.
Again,
creating a web kind of a thing, right? Yeah.
Which won't just happen unless, you're BlueStar and you publish stuff and then your partners link to it or what have you. We get some organic backlinking. People will just link to us because we're a partner of theirs or whatever. But that is also kind of an offensive strategy. People will go out and have someone, a lower level employee, work on the backlink strategy. Hey, we see that you're talking about this. We would love to link to you. In exchange, would you link to us? It is certainly a factor in ranking. So yes, a lot of that stuff that I feel like I learned and was true back in 2002 is still true. It's just more sophisticated, meaning Google has gotten smarter to say, someone asked me, how do you build ads with Midjourney? This blog is called How to Create Ads for Your Business with Generative AI. That's the same thing. But if there are two articles of similar quality and one exactly matches the query, that one might show up.
Right.
Again, like everything in searches, there's multiple factors that get considered from the search engines. But
So are we mostly talking about content here, before we get into the execution part? When we're talking about these optimized searches and that we want to own what a particular search does and where it leads, are we mostly talking about getting them to a blog post, an article, a video, some piece of actual content, not necessarily like
product detail page.
Right, exactly. I don't
service
care if I
page.
get them to a product. I don't care if I get them to our company's, main landing page or an about us page or anything like that, or a solution page. I want them to get to content. Is that kind of what you're thinking should be the first avenue, is we're trying to get them to something we've created that explains our expertise and our knowledge, and then that's kind of our way of wiggling into like, hey, now that we've shown you what we know, what we're doing,
Here's how we can help.
here's our website. Come over here and set up your call or check out our product line.
Yes. So, all of the pages on your website should have that basic optimization of meta title that makes sense, that's clear, and then a meta description that's, again, clear about what the page is and sounds enticing and all that good stuff. But yes, 98% of what I'm talking about is article content, video content. And in my mind, those are the two things to focus on when it's how do we go in and search? How do we bring customers to us when our sales team isn't doing outbound, when our sales team isn't prospecting on LinkedIn or whatever, and we're not running paid ads?
Right.
Yes, go and create content that adds. It's the typical content marketing playbook. How do we go create content that adds value, but that also positions us as a leader, a thought leader in the space? And then, like we do at BlueStar Nation, hey, if you found value in this and you're a solution provider and are looking for the best damn distributor out there, become a BlueStar, distributor or partner rather. And you can do some linking within your copy as well, right? If you're saying, if you just kind of reference some of the services or products that you offer, why not have a hyperlink in the middle of the story as well? But yes, great question, and that is exactly what I'm talking about.
Cool. Well, then let's get into the execution side of things here. Let's talk about this idea of like, all right, we've got great content. We know we've got stuff that we've optimized. It's got all the right tags. It's got all the right descriptions. We know this is what's going to draw some folks in. So we know how do we know what's working? How do we understand like that we've done this and it's doing what it's supposed to do? How is it going to give us a leg up now on the process and make sure that we are the dominating search? And how do we know that we're getting what we need to get out of it?
Right. We've done the work. Is it working?
Right. Yeah.
So I'll answer it from how we look at it at BlueStar. They'll answer it how I think the majority of people out there probably would, because they may or may not be on HubSpot.
Right.
So HubSpot is a tool that we use for our content sites, our blog sites. We do some WordPress as well. But within HubSpot, if you happen to be using that platform, which I know some of our customers are, there's a traffic report where you go into the traffic report and you can look by different page types or whatnot. But long story short, what I'm looking for is I'll always look at the last 7 to 10 days and just see which of our posts, if any, have gotten any significant organic traffic.
Right.
So there's obviously multiple different sources of traffic, right? You can have social media traffic, paid direct traffic, which someone clicked an email you sent them. Then there's organic traffic. People are finding you via search. So for me, if I even see like 12 to 15 visits to an article over the last 7 to 10 days, I will think, what's going on here?
Right.
And I'll go and look at what the article is or whatever the piece of content is, and then I'll try to reverse engineer it, which sounds fancy and it's not. I go to Google and I start searching things that I think the article would show up for. And I pat myself on the back here. I almost always nail it. I'll be like, okay, for instance, we have a post it was an end customer survey that we commissioned. We had a third party. I'm telling John like he doesn't know this, but we commissioned a third party.
It's a good podcast.
They went and talked to 100 restaurant owners and basically asked them all about their point of sale. Do you like it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? What part do you hate? What part do you love? Etc. We wrote an article and published that. That has been showing up in organic search. So I went out and searched, how do restaurants feel about their point of sale? That might have not been the exact, but whatever it was, we were literally the very first organic search and there were no paid advertising.
Right.
So often you'll be the first organic result, but there will be like 3 sponsored ads that show above you, which is frustrating.
So there was no sponsored ads ahead of it. It
None.
started with us. That's pretty impressive.
That's good.
And it was, so the report told the story where I'm like, okay, this isn't, again, it's not 100 views. It was 12 or 15 or 17 or whatever it was. But I went, we're showing up, because if you are getting organic traffic to something, it's because you're showing up on the first page.
Right.
I kind of referenced that earlier. I'll say it again with emphasis. If you are getting organic traffic, especially over a 10-day period, and it's 10 or more visits, you're showing up on the first page for something.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that is how you figure it out. Now, if you weren't on HubSpot, you would do basically the same thing in Google Analytics, which for those that might not know, I feel like this is always like, I'm on a crusade to let everyone know about Google Analytics. It's honestly not like the most usable tool, but it's 100% free. It installs in 10 minutes. You put a line of JavaScript in the header of your website and it immediately starts
tracking.
It's tracking and counting the visitors to your site. And similar to what HubSpot does, breaking them down by traffic source. So you would go into your pages and screens area and just look and say, okay, what have my views been? And then you can drill down by source, which would be organic, and go, which of my pages are getting visits?
Right.
And then again, you kind of go in and start searching and figuring out what are people searching to get there. And ultimately, though, from a longer term strategy, you'd be looking at what was my, let's just say that next Monday we're convinced, Dean, John, and James convinced me we're going all in on search. You start publishing articles on Monday, or let's say you start publishing them on Friday. You would want to compare maybe your last 3 to 5 months to your next 3 to 5 months. And are you seeing a regular, and this is basic, but that's the way you'd look at it. It's the way expert SEO people look at it, is we've increased organic traffic to our website by 70%. That's what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And I said this before, but it's worth saying again. This isn't something where you have to wait a super long time. If you're doing it right, if you're identifying areas where you can win and you're publishing high quality content, which is very important.
Right.
I always say it this way. You go out and search, or find the terms you think make sense, look at what's showing up, click on the top 2, take screenshots of the content, and then go make better content.
Right.
Make way better content.
Right.
And it's like, well, James, I'm not a great writer. That's okay. You should absolutely be leveraging ChatGPT, which I know you and I are a bit split on, but it would be
I've
silly.
come around on it a bit more.
Well, and I think we kind of agree that the process is you can use it to get a first draft, and then you go and actually do a pass, a John Martin pass, a James Korte pass on rewriting and changing words you wouldn't use. And then you go interview experts and include quotes. And maybe you pull some stats that you have or that you find or whatever. You spice it up a little bit with some, with some opinion and some stats and all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, this stuff, it will and can start ranking quickly.
Yeah.
But again, it's that feedback is if it's been 3-4 weeks and you don't see any visits to these, then you keep it moving, keep creating new stuff.
Right.
And again, always be thinking in clusters. What's the big topic? What are the subtopics? Let's build stuff that's interlinking, because in the same way that backlinks are important from external websites, internal linking is important. That helps, the more structure a site can have. People, I know we have a technical audience, have heard of sitemaps. So that's another thing you can actually submit to Google through Search Console, and it just helps Google understand your website.
Right.
Because it's the way the Google bot searches is very sophisticated, and it's really smart to say, okay, on BlueStarInc.com, I can tell that this subdomain gets updated once a week. This is probably a blog or something, whatever it is. The cadence is regular. I should recrawl this portion of the site often. But this portion, which is kind of their base level, and the bot doesn't know this is your base level. It just knows these pages aren't changing much.
Right.
I'm not going to revisit unless someone comes in and says, hey man, re-index
Go look.
this page.
Yeah.
Something has changed. But yeah, again, I'll say it for a third time. This stuff can start happening, and if you're doing it properly, will start happening pretty quickly. You'll start seeing results fast.
Let's hover on that publishing high quality stuff, because I can imagine somebody who's maybe got some questions around that. So let's get a little bit tactical here. I have gone to websites where their FAQ page is just an ongoing scroll of. So I think it's really good advice to, okay, so now I'm going to go to my sales team. I'm going to get that feedback loop going. What questions are you getting? What are we seeing here and out there? Okay, great. Now I've gotten like 10 questions from my sales team, and I've got a cadence going there. I start developing content around that. What am I doing with it, Korte? Am I putting it on individual blog pages? Am I creating that long FAQ page that now, I don't know, that doesn't feel right to me, because now it's like I got all this content on one page and just keep scrolling.
Right.
Tactically, where do we put this stuff? Is it a blog? Is it, what are we doing?
Yeah, so definitely individual posts.
Individual posts. There you go.
Individual posts, because each one of them then can have a unique title, a unique description. But something you also made me think about that I probably wouldn't have otherwise said is, man, if you identify that list, let's just say 15 or 20 questions that we know our customers are always asking, which means they're probably also searching these things, or at least some people are. In the content world, we refer to as waterfalls, sometimes content waterfalls, which is what's the first piece we create, and then what do we create as a result of that?
I got you.
So this is kind of off the cuff here, and not saying it just because we're literally recording a podcast, but one way, and I think we're actually looking into doing this for a couple topics within our business, is bring in those experts who are going to go, gosh, James, John, I'm busy. I don't have, hey, could you come be a guest on the podcast and we can talk deeply about something and record 2 hours and just ask that salesperson all the questions. Well, when you're talking to, prospects, what are their objections? And then publish the podcast, but then also give that podcast to your marketing person or your writer or your freelancer or ChatGPT and say, hey, or maybe create a transcript from it and say, identify the top 10 topics here, and then you create blog posts from those. And then maybe you create little clips from the podcast that end up on YouTube Shorts or on YouTube proper, because
they marry up to that. Yeah.
Right, because I don't know about you guys, but man, YouTube is another huge place. I mean, when I'm trying to change the air filter in my car years ago, I go to YouTube. How the hell on the Honda Element? Long tail search, and there's the result. Yeah. People are doing that for the devices, the products, the software that our partners sell as well.
Yeah.
So think about how you can, we always say repurpose, but this is more so create one piece and then create a bunch of stuff from it. And yes, give it all its own place so it can be optimized kind of individually.
Yeah. Right.
There's two things I want to call out that I think you made a very good point on, which one was the comparing the before and after of your work. And the other part was when you mentioned like, hey, maybe you only got like 10 or 12 search hits, that led back there versus 100 or 1,000. I think just like any marketing, it's always important to set your expectations at a reasonable place. Like, this isn't something you're going to do where you're suddenly going to get thousands of people clicking and coming to you and searching for you. Because to your point again, some of these searches may be so niche and so specific that there's just not a lot of people that are going to be making that specific search.
Yes.
You want to win that search when it does happen, but the expectation should be like, look, I'm not going to do this because I think that 100 people are ever going to search this. I will feel good if 10 people have searched this. Realistically, maybe 5 people do. And again, like I mentioned earlier, if one of those 5 searches it, comes to you, books a meeting with you because they think you're an expert, then everything you've done was already worth it because of that. 100%. So I think that's a very important point to remember, is always keep in the back of your mind, like, where are your goalposts set for what you expect to get out of this? And they're not Super Bowl.
That's right.
Goalpost
quality over quantity.
Yeah. Yes. Like, I want to win the day at the local high school one night. Like,
I'll say 2 quick things.
That's it.
The difference.
So wait before you go. So you're saying it's not a good tactic to have like the Travis Kelce, whatever in your meta, just to try to get the quantity of
probably not. You're not aiming for
and Taylor Swift, by the way.
You're not aiming for the stars here. You're aiming for, I want to win. I want to win that one person that needed something on a random Tuesday in November, like.
Yep. I'll make a comparison. Again, I kind of said something similar earlier, which is search can compound over time, especially if you're early on something. If you get early on a trend and you get some good content out there, and then the volume increases over time and you're in a good spot, it can go from 10 a month to 100 a month.
Right. I'm not saying it can't happen, but don't assume that's what's going to happen.
You shouldn't expect that you're going to be getting 4,000 hits on a blog post per month unless you really kick some butt, which is doable. And to that point, our unboxed video series, I'm kind of bleeding into our proof section here a bit.
But let's go ahead and do that, though. Let's take what we've talked about and show off some of the things we've done here.
For sure. So, we a few years ago now, we started recording in a studio adjacent to this one. Someone from BlueStar opening up boxes of our vendors' products. Right. It was me to start. Now it's Sam. And we're just kind of talking about, what we see, how it feels, how it looks, some of the key features and that good stuff.
Very simple concept.
And our vendors love it because it's about their products and they can show off their new stuff. But the reason we did it, the most visible spot for it is on LinkedIn.
Right.
But it lives a life of 24 to 48 hours. The difference between that and search, not even just Google search, but YouTube search, is that it doesn't have that short lifespan. Meaning right now, if you were to go and search in YouTube, I did this yesterday, Honeywell Dolphin, which is a pretty high volume search. If I had to guess, we are the #1 result in YouTube. It's an unbox of me opening up the Honeywell Dolphin.
Right.
It's got 4,300 views.
There you go.
It's been there for 2 years, I think, but 4,300 views.
Yeah. Right.
And so it's like,
that's more than some stuff. I promise you, I don't know there's an episode of our podcast that has 4,300 views.
It's a lot.
I know it doesn't.
For a
Well, we need to put Honeywell Dolphin in this meta.
No doubt. Yeah, no, for sure. But so, you can get to a meaningful number. And even I imagine that's a pretty heavily competed for term in Google search.
Right.
But on YouTube, it's not as much. And if you go look around, Honeywell has some videos. Some of our partners have some videos. But I just wanted to paint the picture that it is doable. And then I also wanted to make the point that, a lot of us live in social every day, and you make a post and you're like, God, I hope that this really pops immediately because it's going to be old news soon. Right. Whereas search can live on. And so that's, just something worth keeping in mind when it comes to, is this worthy of our time?
I like it. There you go. It's a good tagline. Search lives on.
Search lives on.
All right. Any other examples you want us to throw out there of stuff that we've done? You mentioned the blog post about the POS earlier, the Dolphin thing.
Yeah, let me see. I got a couple.
I just want people to have some tangible examples of how simple this is, of just things. And mind you, again, this is all stuff that we were already doing anyway. We didn't do this stuff with the intent of winning search necessarily. It's like, this is just part of what we do. And yet it's stuff that, again, this is what you can do with just the stuff you're putting out there, not trying to do this. Imagine what you can do if you are putting some intent behind it, too.
Yeah, I'll give one more example, and it's not us. It's actually a partner of ours named Lowry Solutions. They are showing up first in Google for the term, how does RFID asset tracking work?
That's impressive.
That's a pretty good one, right?
Yeah.
And that's just, I guess the point to make there is, I bet they're getting a ton of traffic from that.
Right.
And I didn't go and analyze the page to see kind of what they're doing to try to send people, to different spots, kind of lead gen spots on their website. But if I had to guess, they're doing some work on that. But that's a pretty big term but it's niche. It is niche. To us, it feels big because it's big in our world. And I think that's the message to our partners out there is you feel like, oh gosh, I know that there are 8 or 10 or 12 other companies nationally that do this, but are they focused on content? Are they doing search? Because what I always appreciate about conversations that we have like this is it's asking a lot of our partners. Right. Some of our partners are not big companies. The majority of them are not big companies. They may have a marketing person or 0 marketing people. They work with an outside firm or whatever. But in the same way that I realize it's a challenge and it's a big ask of them, in the same way, it's a huge opportunity if they go execute on it because few people are. I mean, and Lowry's not a small company. They've got some resources and all that good stuff, but WASP Barcode is right below them. They're showing up. So it really is about being strategic and going and just getting it done and seeing where you can show up, and you'll surprise yourself.
Yeah, I love that. That's a good success story right there. All right. Well, hey,
I got a couple questions.
Yeah, fill it in, bud.
What do you think about, like, how long do you monitor this stuff? So let's say you come up with your strategy, you got to develop and things of that nature, and then it's an ongoing process, right? But I mean, do you have any opinions on, like, is this something you should be checking back in monthly? Is it weekly? Is it quarterly?
Yeah, how much time is this going to take up?
Yeah, right? Because, I can just imagine some people out there, okay, I'll whip up my strategy, I'll reinvigorate with SEO, I'll get back into it, we'll produce some content around, everything that we've been talking about here, but then 6 months later, do I go back and look at it, or do you think it's like important enough that you should have it on your calendar once a month that you're like analyzing this?
My take is that people listening would need to see some results to buy in fully. Do you know what I mean? I feel like they might go, all right, we'll give this a shot. But I think in order for it to really become part of their ongoing process from a content standpoint, which I think it should, they're going to need to see some results. Meaning I would suggest just go do this, meaning create this content waterfall where you're going to interview your SMEs or however that makes most sense for you. You're going to publish content, written and video, based on those interviews, conversations, what have you. Just put your head down and do the work. Do it for 6 to 8 months and publish. If you have the discipline to not worry and not look at it and just commit, there's nothing wrong about that. But also there's nothing wrong to start publishing, and if you're really excited about it and you do feel like you need that, man, I need some proof that this is worthy
reinforcement.
Of my people's time,
right.
Makes sense. I would understand if you said to me, Korte, can we just make sure this is actually worth the team's time? But, yeah, of course, dude, that makes sense. So yeah, weekly if you have the time, but I also think, especially when you first get started, give it 4 weeks. Publish a few pieces
you're advocating that they develop the muscle memory, right? Like there's going to be some payoff here, and then it'll just be something that they do work into their workflow.
Yep. I mean, I mentioned this earlier, but when we published, it was really early on in the Midjourney. And I've talked about this a bit, but for those that don't know, Midjourney is my favorite tool for creating imagery using AI. So generative AI image creation. I need an image of, a barcode scanner in the middle of a warehouse, and it creates that image from thin air, which is really, really cool. Really quickly after that chatter started, we decided we were going to go and write an article about it for our customer newsletter. So the thinking was, man, this is something our customers should be using. I don't even think search was really in our minds. Right. But, and this is, I guess,
at that point, I mean, I think you were playing around with Midjourney before ChatGPT even became a thing.
This
like
is
you were already messing around with that and you were talking about it, and we were, it was a conversation before the AI thing really blew up.
Almost a year before.
I would trust your memory better than mine. But.
Because we talked about it in VARTech, and then ChatGPT blew up, that following January.
I was saying, we were here in this studio when you were showing this stuff. You were putting it up on the screen, like, check out what this stuff can do, guys. And we're like, what the heck is this?
And I just realized, again, because we talk to customers often, that, man, access to imagery, especially some of the niche stuff that our industry and our customers would need, is really tricky to get, or it's stocky and it looks like crap, and like, oh my gosh, you can art direct your own photo shoot here for $20 a month. Anyway, we wrote and published the article because we knew or believed that there would be value for our customers. And then, and I guess this is a point worth making too, when we actually went to publish it, I did think about the title. Well, what would people search if they were looking for this? And what's your description say? But that was saying it was secondary is giving it more credit than it deserves. I just knew that the customers would like this. It would make a cool topical piece for the newsletter. And then a couple weeks later, I started seeing, holy crap, we've got 45 visits to this page over the last 7 days from organic search. And I went and started searching on Google to find what we were showing up for. The interesting part, and I mentioned this to you before we started rolling, John, which is nowadays, so we were real early on that, and we reaped some benefits of traffic to that page, although it wasn't connected to our business, so there wasn't like a huge benefit for BlueStar to that necessarily. It was just cool. It was a cool story. I shared it on LinkedIn. Now there are a bunch of software tools, solutions you can pay for that use Midjourney to create ads. They take Midjourney's tech and take it a few steps further, and hey, now your ad's got text on it and all that good stuff. Now when you search the same query that would have shown our article, you see just a laundry list of all these different apps now, or these software tools. So it was short-lived, but it was cool, and it was really about identifying.
We got there first, in some ways.
I think that would be the thing, and I'll use one example. I know, well, whatever. Our vendors come out with new products all the time. Some of them with more fanfare than others. If you see something coming or you catch wind of a big product coming from a big company that's relevant to your business, go and shoot one of your tech's reaction to it. Get your hands on it, or even if you don't have your hands on it, just go and talk about what the implications are. Put that thing on YouTube, put it on your website, maybe write a little article and embed the page. Just think about timing and relevance of new stuff coming to you. Shouldn't be the whole strategy, but it's certainly be like one of the pillars. Is what questions are our customers asking could be a pillar. What's topical and interesting to people in our industry could be a pillar. And you got to get creative on the third one.
I like it. Good stuff.
I got a wet towel before we move on. Here's the wet towel. So how much longer are search engines relevant?
That is a great question.
Like if I have my own personal LLM and that I'm just asking it questions and it's giving me feedback. I have my own perplexity.ai or whatever, and then why do I even go to a search engine anymore?
We were just talking about that over at the office before we came over here.
Okay, is that a reality? Like, does that change? Or is it just going to be grabbing some information from the internet so it's still relevant to do SEO? I don't know.
There's starting to be a lot of conversation about whether generative AI is going to replace search.
Yeah.
And granted, Google obviously is paying attention to that because they've created their own,
Bard.
Gemini now.
Gemini, that's right.
Like they've done that themselves too, so they recognize that potential out there. And I don't know. Like, what's your take on that, guy? Because I don't know at this point if that is going to happen. I'll be honest, I'm starting to use those tools a little more often for the kinds of stuff that I would have searched. But just an example, when I'm looking for a third party newsletter, to do an e-blast through for a content campaign or something. Whereas
outlets.
Exactly. In the past, I might have gone to Google and said, hey, I need to find, outlets, newsletters for nurses or something like that. And I get the laundry list. That's the kind of thing where I would have found myself going through like 3 or 4 pages.
Yeah, you're scrolling through,
stuff. Now I go to, Bard, Google, whatever, I go to, one of those tools and say, hey, tell me some of the top newsletters, that offer, and I'll even say that offer, a buy-in for a sponsored e-blast or whatever to their audience. And it'll give me a list of like 15, and then I can go and just look them up directly and contact them, reach out to them. And you can even ask like, hey, give me the link to the site or give me the link to their advertising page or something.
So it's still relevant to the SEO on the internet, right? I guess that's not going to change.
I would assume. I won't be surprised, and I know Corey asked you for your opinion on this, but I won't be surprised if we get to the point where, in addition to SEO optimization for how to appear in search, you start seeing all these companies figuring out like, hey, here's how to optimize how to appear
for
in
AI.
For sure.
And maybe that's the same thing, sort of, but there's maybe probably going to be some way to reach. So what's your take on all
today?
Of that?
That's where I am, which is if you go and search for top distributors of X vendor, which I have done on ChatGPT, we will come up as one of them.
It's good.
Which means that that information is coming from the internet.
Right.
So if
we obviously didn't program that,
Right. If you're optimizing your website and you're thinking about long tail terms, really niche stuff, the generative AIs or the AI searches or what have you are still going to mention you in relevant ways. I think. So I think that's interesting. The other thing that I've been hearing a lot of SEOs talk about on LinkedIn recently is, yes, Google came out with not Gemini, because that's their answer to ChatGPT. Right. They actually have a generative search tool that would, when you're searching, it is trying to just give you the answer instead of give you a bunch of links. So I'll just say on that side, 2 things. A, I think adoption of stuff like that can often take longer than we expect. So I think
for sure,
till it's evident that the traditional SEO optimization is kind of in the past, we should still be thinking about it. And to your point, John, I still do believe that it's going to play into it.
I think it will.
There will probably be some best practices around how to show it for voice searching and stuff like that. And the other thing is, Google is kind of disrupting their own ad model.
Yes,
by not giving you the blue links. I'm sure they'll figure out another way to take people's money, right? But right now, what I'm hearing a lot of, again, people who know way more about SEO and have looked into this closer than I have, saying, yes, Google has built the tool because they want to show that they're on the cutting edge, because of course they are, but they're not that motivated to release it and like have it completely replace their billions and billions of dollars of ad revenue.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, you wanted asset tracking software? Here's 5 people that paid us to show their blue link.
I think it's going to be really fascinating what happens there.
be.
But to your point, I think SEO still matters because LLMs are getting trained on data that is the internet. And you can actually make an argument it's even more important now to go in through an SEO process because as you're getting trained, as it's training, information, you want to be there, right?
Yeah, when people start asking who are the leading providers of X, you want ChatGPT, Gemini, whoever to know
to train
you're
on
one
you.
of them.
Yeah,
and the only way to tell is
Yeah.
to tell the search engine that this is the way it works.
But to your earlier point, though, when we were talking about like what Lowry Solutions has done, like the whole, how does an RFID asset tracking solution work, something to that effect. Again, if you do that in Google right now, you get a company-specific page that is from them and could lead you directly back to them. If you do that same exact search in generative AI, it's just going to give you the answer. It's not going to accredit it necessarily. And maybe that's a battle that now that companies are going to start fighting. That because again, we're in the wild west of this stuff.
Yeah, right.
Where maybe there'll be a point where because you're already getting the battles over like, hey, you're using my stuff, my content without crediting it to me, without tying it back to me, without necessarily even potentially my permission. So maybe that becomes something where as people do those kind of searches, the accreditation's built into it also. Like, hey, this came from Lowry Solutions page. This came from BlueStar's page.
How very lawyer of you.
Yeah, let me add to that, John. So your point is a good one, which is if I asked that question, it would just give me the answer. It wouldn't send me to a web page. But if that was where my intent ended as a searcher, then that was never qualified.
If you're taking the next step, you got to get to somebody. Yeah.
It's the same argument people make about featured snippets. Do you guys know what a featured snippet is in search? I actually meant to reference this. I'm glad it came up kind of naturally. For a while, BlueStar owned the featured snippet for POS versus MPOS. Nice. And the featured snippet is when the answer is right there at the top.
Right.
Instead of just a link, it's like like a little truncated version of your answer than a link to the website.
Right.
So again, if people just truly wanted to know the difference, then okay, the snippet. But if you actually want to know the difference because you're interested in purchasing one or the other, then it's a next step. So if
that's the connection that's not happening yet.
Yeah, how does
generative AI
RFID asset tracking work? This is how it works. Who are some of the leading providers of it? Now it's guiding me to ultimately go and find you. So who the hell knows what the internet's going to look like in 5 years? But
5 years, dude. Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot faster
there's
than that.
Other people a lot smarter and a lot more technical than us are going to have to hash that stuff out, and then we'll figure out how to market appropriately.
Yeah, we'll do another podcast on it when it's clear.
Yeah, exactly. But that was a great question. I'm glad you brought that up because you're right. There's a lot of people sounding the death knell of search, which, to be fair, has been something people have been doing for as long as Google has been dominating search.
Well, look how big they are, right? When you got a target on your back that big.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of people that want to take it down.
The YouTube exists, TikTok exists, all of these places.
Right.
I don't do it because I'm just not a TikToker, and that's not a judgment. It's just not the place for me. People are claiming that young people use TikTok as their primary search engine. So when they want to know about a product,
before that, it was YouTube,
there.
basically. Yeah. Which, is Google's also. But
keep that in mind when we're talking about search.
Google's just going to buy TikTok then. And
we're talking about old people search. Is that what you're trying to say?
You think about the searchability of everything you're publishing everywhere.
Right.
I think that there are certain areas that are more relevant than others, but it's not just the old school search engine results page on Google or
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
All right, hey man, this is great stuff. I'm glad we did this conversation. And by the way, just for the record, a behind the scenes, this was a literal last minute thing that we needed a slot.
Hey, we can riff on anything, especially marketing stuff. Come on.
And Dean was like, maybe you should ask Korte. So I asked Korte, and he's like, yeah, give me a couple hours. And like last night, he's like sending me these notes and be like, here's the stuff I want to talk about today. And here we go.
All good.
A great podcast.
There you go.
So thank you so much for stepping in and doing that. This was good stuff. Hey, as always, thank you so much to our sponsors here on the TEConnect podcast. We appreciate those of you that sponsor the pod directly, our TEConnect program. Make sure that you are following us everywhere you can. Like and subscribe our channels and the podcast itself. Leave us reviews. We need those. And also send in information to us about the stuff you want to hear about on the show. If Korte mentions something, you're like, man, I want to go a little further down that road.
A little deeper. Yeah.
Fine. We'll drag him back in here and make him talk a little bit more about it. it's really hard. He's so hard to rest his elbow and get him to come in here and talk about, cool marketing stuff. So always happy to do that. Send us those topic ideas. There's always a link in the show notes where you can submit ideas to us, and you get a free T-shirt for doing so. You can also always find us on LinkedIn. Follow BlueStar on LinkedIn, and we're always happy sharing stuff about the pod there. So, you can leave a comment if you got an idea for us, or you can always reach out to us directly by email, TEConnect@BlueStarInc.com. All right, let's wrap things up here. Let's talk real quickly a value to the VAR that I feel like we've touched on throughout here. But if we're going to succinctly kind of wrap this up, and maybe give someone listening right now, because I know a lot of our listeners, some of them may be marketing, a lot of them are probably sales oriented. Maybe they're an owner of a reseller or something, or someone at a high level in the company that is not necessarily in the weeds doing this stuff. But what can they do? What can an individual, one or two things maybe they could do to help with their company's SEO, to help make this strategy happen or get them to where they need to go, whether it's, helping out their marketing team or doing some of the work themselves?
John, I'm going to share a metaphor I thought of last night.
All right, let's hear it.
If you're driving to work, Dale Earnhardt could drive you, and he's going to get you there more quickly than I would, and probably with more style points. But I could also get you to work, probably with better music. You don't have to be the Dale Earnhardt of the SEO world to make this stuff happen.
Right.
You just need to have a brain. It isn't that difficult. Yes, you can get super duper deep on all kinds of schema and structured data, or you can just write a good title, a good meta description, which is just what describes the article, and then go deep, talk to a few experts, and you can publish stuff that can get first page on Google. You can do it. Again,
I like it.
I'm not an SEO expert. You don't have to be. You just got to go out there with intent to write great content on topics people are searching for.
Yeah.
I like the angle of this question, regardless of their position, because I think anybody in the company, and here's my phrase, if you lean in on the content, everybody can help, right? Everybody is in contact with their customers, and everybody has a different lens into what is being asked of the company, right? Even if you're in the accounting department, some pain points of your customers. Maybe that's something that is relevant, that needs to be put into content, right? And searchable thereof. So everybody can play a role on the content.
Yep, I completely agree. And my thing too is like to think for yourself, what am I an expert in? Like, what am I good at?
Right.
What am I contributing to my company that makes me so good at being here and why I'm here? What is our company good at? What are we experts at? What do we think we're doing better than anybody else? And everybody has it, especially if you're a salesperson, you know how to go in front of a customer and tell them why they should be picking you and your company and your business and your expertise over someone else, because you know what you do better than anyone else. Yeah. Whatever that is, that's what you should be making some content about.
If you're a service tech, right? You're a service tech in the back room on the service bench. I mean, you may not think that you have a role.
Right.
I can guarantee you there's a lot of content that's coming out of that service desk that would be relevant to people finding your solutions in your company.
So even if you're not the one who's creating that yourself, at least maybe go to the people that are and say, hey, you know what? I can talk very fluently about X. There's a reason we bring Korte on our podcast. If we want to talk about marketing, we know we have someone in-house that can talk about marketing better than you and I ever could, even though we are marketers. We know the guy to bring in, like, hey, we want to have this conversation. You and I couldn't have sat here and had this SEO conversation.
No.
We'd be like, yeah, search. It's a good thing.
But he's not the guy to ask to configure a CT40.
Exactly right.
Exactly. So
you may know how to do that. It wouldn't surprise me at all if you did. But anyway.
Play with your strengths. Play with what makes you good at what you're doing, and figure out how you can build content around that. And then you've already laid that foundation by having the good stuff that you can go out and promote and create the searches around. So,
for sure. Yeah,
something everybody can do. All right, let's wrap up as always with What's TEConnecting with us, where we talk about something in the world of science, business, tech, innovation. Yes. Something we just feel like chatting about today.
Yes.
Korte, what's TEConnecting with you right now, bud?
And I never have anything good for this.
Yeah, you do. Come on.
Well, maybe sometimes, but this one is going to catch people off guard a little bit. I have rediscovered Pinterest.
Okay.
People talk a lot about how good TikTok's algorithm is. When I do open up TikTok once a month, I see nothing that I care about. When I open up
That's because you're only doing it once a month.
Good point.
If it was daily, you would. But
Pinterest, similarly, every time I open up that homepage, it is full. And I'm a very visual guy.
Right.
Whatever, art to fashion to blah, blah, blah. And I see stuff and I'm like, this is me. Pinterest gets me. And I use it's not just seeing cool stuff, because really what it contributes to is consumerism and me buying more cool stuff that I see.
Right.
But man, I've started to use it a lot for inspiration. So we're starting to think about VARTech and themes and environmental design. And I go and type in, environmental event, trade show design. And there's just pages full of really cool stuff.
Right, right.
Anyway, I don't know that that's applicable to other people, but I have rediscovered Pinterest and I'm loving it. And it feels like the algorithm is just really good. It's showing me stuff that I want to see.
Dialed in.
Nice.
Yeah.
Huh, interesting.
Like you gave a very subtle VARTech teaser there too. Yeah. Stay tuned.
I don't even have a Pinterest account. I guess I got to get there. Yeah.
All right.
Well, anyway.
Good stuff. All right, so get back into Pinterest. Yeah, I like it.
Absolutely.
Dean was TEConnecting with you, bud.
Let's stay with the AI. Did you know that AI likes to drink water?
I mean,
we always talk about like AI consuming power, right? Like it consumes enough power to power, I think, Norway at this point, or something like some small Nordic country. But anyway, here's the report. Microsoft reports its water usage rose 34% from 2021 to 2022, largely for its use of cooling data centers running AI training models. And of course, the geeks were able to get it down to this. It estimates that a half a liter of water is needed to perform 5 to 50 questions.
Oh, wow.
So there it is. If you're asking 5 questions, you've consumed half a liter of water.
Wow.
To do that. Now that sounds bad, right? I mean, to me that was like, oh, that's really interesting.
You wouldn't want to waste 5 liters of water or whatever at home, would you?
But then I started diving into the numbers, and it's like, well, maybe it's not quite as bad as it sounds. So Microsoft said that the company had consumed 6.4 million cubic meters of water in 2022. That sounds like a lot. But then I went into AI and said, well, how much is that actually? That's like 2.5 Olympic pools. So it's not like we're draining the Amazon to run our AI like it was on the power side. I'm like,
that's
2 Olympic pools? I don't know. If I put like rain catchers on my roof, I might be able to contribute to that. But now in this day and age, of course, Microsoft had to come out with their policy around environmental sustainability, and that don't worry about it. We're net positive on water usage. And anyway, I went down a rabbit hole on that side. But
we're smashing together hydrogen and oxygen to make some more. We got this. We promise.
Yeah,
we're good.
We're replenishing 15 million cubic meters of water. Oh, so 6 Olympics. Does that even matter? I don't know. It doesn't feel like it matters. But anyway, I did find it interesting that the water usage.
Yeah.
Half a liter for 5 questions. There you go, brother.
Half a liter for 5 questions.
Yeah, there's your nugget. So let's get TEConnecting.
Next time I'm searching for stuff on Gemini, I'm going to be like, oh man, there just went half a liter. All right. So if you remember a couple weeks back when we did a Tech Bites episode, and we were talking about some of the concept cars from CES.
Yes.
And I mentioned how we're getting closer to that, and we're getting closer to a car like KITT from Knight Rider, or the Love Bug, and whatever. Like the actual kind of car that can talk back to you and have a conversation with you and has some intelligence behind it.
Over there.
Apparently, we're getting closer to that.
Hey.
Thanks to Microsoft and a company that I did not know still existed, TomTom.
What? TomTom is still around?
The formerly the GPS company that back when GPS was a little box you had to stick in your car and not just
that feels like Mr. Irrelevant in the app world today. I mean, that was like the bomb 10 years ago, but yeah.
Apparently, they're still
TomTom is
a
still
thriving
around.
company. They're still doing a lot of stuff with GPS, but apparently they are working with Microsoft to bring generative AI to automobiles.
All right.
Where you'd have a fully integrated conversational driving assistant. Not how about you, but I do use like Siri in my car, to like if I want to send a text or something, or to make a phone call, I might say like, "Hey Siri, do this." Or occasionally, like if my son's like, "I want to listen to this certain piece of music," I'm like, "Well, I can't be doing this while I'm trying to drive," so I'll ask Siri to play whatever, a certain song or his playlist or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's only so much you can get out of that. It's a very one way type conversation.
Yes,
it's not like you can have an ongoing discussion. And say like, oh no, never mind. I want that other song instead. Or hey, while you're doing that, can you also ping the house and tell it to start the oven up or something like that.
Right.
But apparently that's where they're trying to get more natural conversations where you can actually have a chat with your car. All I know is if this happens, I want it to sound like KITT. I want William Daniels was that guy's name who did the voice. He's long past, unfortunately.
Yes, Michael.
Yes. give me the AI KITT, because that is the only voice that I want to hear.
I love it.
Having that conversation. And I want him to be a little bit sarcastic, like KITT
Right.
was.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he
need
definitely
that.
had an edge to him.
So, so they're promising that this integration will work with most major platforms and infotainment packages in the future. So they expect this to be a thing that's going to happen. So someday,
nice.
we might be asking our car to go to turbo boost or something, or
making it even more awkward. You know, when you're driving down the street and you just see people mouth,
Oh, yeah,
they're talking, but
Right.
it's like there's nobody in the car.
Right.
To me, that's still a weird thing. It's like, who's that person? What are they doing?
you go.
And now we're going to be talking in our
There you
cars
go.
even more.
Exactly. But mine also, I also need to have the little red light on the front of the car.
Oh, yes.
Like, I'm going to have
Of
to
course.
install that too,
course.
just to,
Cordy, do you know what we're talking about here?
Not really.
No, he doesn't. See,
It's
Corey,
so
you're
much-
not that much younger than us.
No, I'm just
Knight
Did you
pretending
ever
Rider.
watch
like I
Knight
know.
Rider back in the 80s?
No, I'm aware of it, but no, I don't think I
Oh
watched
my
it.
gosh, that was the best
He
show.
had the coolest car in the world, and it talked to him. That's basically all you need to do.
And it had a red light.
And it had a great voice.
Yeah.
And a red light on the front. So.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Man,
We just aged you.
I know. I just I just suddenly felt just that much closer to the grave.
Anyway. Yeah.
That is all for us today. It is time to unplug and go Google ourselves, I guess.
Yes.
Which apparently Dean is going to be the top search
Apparently,
result
yes.
soon.
Yes, I need a page.
Me, I'm still going to be buried like 50 pages into the internet before you even find anything about me, which is just how I like it. And as always, folks, please stay connected. TEConnect Podcast is brought to you by Elo, who has completely redesigned their iSeries 3 with Intel,
Nice.
adding the dependability businesses need.
I like it.
These brilliant and beautiful interactive displays feature a modular design. We love them.
We love modular. Yes.
And endless versatility with sizes of 15, 17, 22, and 24 inches, a slate version, and square or wide aspect options.
Boom.
You have to find something useful for your customers and their needs, right? I mean, come on. How much more do they need to give you here?
Right? You just had it right there.
There you go.
That's everything.
Every iSeries offers 10-touch Touch Pro PCAP, a fanless IP54 rated design,
Mm-hmm.
edge-to-edge glass, and Intel's 12th gen processors for reliable enterprise-grade security.
That is some trumped up stuff right there.
Superstar stuff going on
Yes.
here, yes. Available in models that support Windows, Chrome OS Flex, and Linux. The iSeries 3 is also compatible with Elo's Z stands and Z Series Elo Pause for self-service and point-of-sale applications. So if you want to learn more about the redesigned iSeries 3, check out the link in the show notes or contact the BlueStar Elo team.